My name is Jessica Edwards. I'm 33, and I was halfway through my lunch when I stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. I had been scrolling Instagram absent-mindedly, letting the cappuccino steam fog my glasses. That's when I saw it. Ryan, my boyfriend of 3 years, smiling in a pool photo with his arm around a woman I thought was ancient history. Bianca, his ex. The caption read, "Living my best life with my friends. My body, my choice." Normal, innocent, except for one glaring truth. Ryan had told me this was a casual boys' weekend with friends, some time to unwind, but in the background, unmistakable, was Bianca. Her red bikini was vivid even through my phone screen, her champagne glass raised, laughing like she owned the place. I zoomed in. There it was, his distinctive tattoo, the one curling in cursive on his forearm. Blessed. There was no mistaking it. He was there, with her, and she was close, way too close. A sandwich sat forgotten in my lap. I scrolled through the stories. More pool shots, group selfies, a video of them doing shots together. Meredith, Bianca, some other friends, and Ryan. All grinning, carefree, utterly oblivious to me. My pulse quickened, but I forced my breathing to steady. I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks, the kind of anger that threatens to erupt before you've fully processed it. This wasn't just a trip. This was a lie, wrapped in layers of deceit. Thursday morning, he had kissed me goodbye, promised he'd miss me, promised it was just a relaxing boys' weekend. That lie played on repeat in my mind, and now evidence stared me straight in the face. I opened the airline app. Sunday evening, 6:15 p.m. Ryan's return flight. 3 clicks later, it was gone. Non-refundable? Not my problem. Not anymore. Next, I called Louise, the building's concierge. Her voice was cheerful, unaware of the storm I was unleashing. "Hey, Louise, I need a locksmith today." "Everything okay, Ms. Edwards?" "Ex-boyfriend situation. He's out of town. I need the locks changed before he returns." "Say no more. Someone will be there by 3 p.m. Then I opened our text thread. The last message, "Missing you, baby. Spa day is so relaxing, but would be better with you here." I didn't reply. I never did. Instead, I went to work packing his things. Clothes, electronics, personal items, everything he'd left behind. Folded, organized, labeled. The neatness was almost therapeutic, a contrast to the chaos of his lies. By 4 p.m., the boxes were lined up by the door, a silent army ready to march out of my life. I did something petty, maybe too petty, but I was hurt, and hurt makes you clever in ways you never imagined. I called Valentina, Ryan's sister, asking if she was free for dinner. "Random," I said. "Just catching up." Valentina had no idea what was coming. No idea that the boys' weekend was actually a vacation with his ex, the same woman who had once shattered his trust. 5:47 p.m. Sunday. We sat at the new Italian restaurant. Valentina's face was a canvas of shock, disbelief, anger, and hurt as I showed her the posts. "The lying witch," she whispered, almost to herself. I told her about the Instagram evidence, the vacation, the spa weekend excuse. Her voice trembled in disbelief. My phone buzzed. Ryan, right on schedule. I ignored the call. Another buzz. A text. "Why isn't my ticket working? This isn't funny. Call me. I'm stranded at the airport." Valentina read over my shoulder, incredulous. "You canceled his flight and changed the locks?" "Yes. He lied to everyone, including you. I'm done enabling him." The calls kept coming, texts flying in rapid succession. "Baby, please, I love you. It's not what it looks like. You're overreacting." I could feel the desperation in his words, the clawing need to rewrite reality. I typed back nothing. I didn't need to. The silence was my reply, a wall he could not breach. Later that evening, his panic escalated. He tried to gaslight, to claim it was all friends hanging out, but every photo, every story, screamed the truth. His attempt at manipulation only cemented my clarity. I wasn't losing my mind. I was seeing the reality for what it was. Valentina raised her glass. I mirrored her, a quiet toast to truth, to control, to reclaiming what he had tried to take, my life, my trust, my peace. That night, I went home alone, feeling the strange mix of vindication and sorrow that comes when someone you love proves themselves unworthy. My apartment was calm. my rules, my choices, my space. He had violated all of it, and I would never let him back. By Monday morning, the apartment smelled faintly of lavender cleaner and fresh paper from the boxes lined along the hallway. I watched the sunlight move across the floor, reflecting off the neatly stacked piles of his life. Clothes folded, electronics bundled, personal keepsakes cataloged. Every item a reminder of the trust he had broken, and my power to reclaim it. I am Jessica Edwards, 31, and this was the first real taste of freedom after betrayal. It wasn't victory, it was justice. I sat at the kitchen counter, tapping my finger against my coffee mug, replaying the images in my mind. Ryan, grinning at Bianca, champagne glass in hand, all lies smeared across my reality. The calmness in my mind was almost terrifying, like a storm building behind glass. I called Valentina ostensibly for dinner, but in truth it was to solidify my plan. Sunday, 6 o'clock? That new Italian place? I said casually. She had no idea this was the night she would see the truth unfold. By mid-afternoon, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Ryan's calls, texts, pleas. It's not what it looks like. Please, Jessica, I love you. I ignored them all. Instead, I prepared. His apartment key went into an envelope, clearly labeled Storage Unit 42B, access code inside. His flight canceled, the locks changed. Everything he thought he owned, I now controlled. I felt the weight of it, heavy and yet strangely liberating. Valentina arrived for dinner. She had a fork full of pasta halfway to her mouth when I slid my phone across the table, the Instagram posts glowing on the screen. Her expression shifted from curiosity to horror to absolute outrage. She stammered. Her voice rose with disbelief, then steadied with clarity. I can't believe he would lie to all of us. And her? With Bianca? I didn't need to answer. The evidence was enough. Meanwhile, Ryan's messages escalated in tone. You can't do this. You're overreacting. Baby, it's just friends. I swear. My pulse stayed calm, my breathing measured. Overreacting? I thought. This wasn't overreaction. It was accountability. Every text was a thread I pulled tighter around him. Every ignored call a silent assertion of control. He didn't get to rewrite the story. I would. Valentina's anger flared, but it was sharp-edged and constructive. She helped me parse the lies, catalog the evidence, prepare for the inevitable confrontation. There was no screaming, no drama in the apartment, just calculated, deliberate preparation. By evening, the apartment was a war room. Boxes labeled, locks changed, keys secured, phone screens screenshot for evidence. I sipped my wine, quiet, letting the weight of the day sink in. Ryan was stranded at the airport, helpless, and I was finally able to breathe. Every so often, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The panic in his voice, the desperation of his text, it was proof he had underestimated me. That he had lied, cheated, and assumed forgiveness would be automatic. I thought of Bianca, the ex-girlfriend. She had been part of his web of deceit, smiling for Instagram photos while he claimed innocence. I felt anger, yes, but also a fierce clarity. No one manipulates me without consequence. As I finalized the plan, I couldn't help but imagine the fallout. How his calls would escalate, how he would plead, rationalize, spin his lies. I let it simmer in my mind, each scenario feeding the fire of quiet justice I was orchestrating. By the time Valentina left, I was ready. The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars, indifferent to human drama. But inside, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Control had returned to me, and the first move had been made. Ryan's lies had met their match, and I had only just begun. By Sunday evening, Ryan was trapped in a fluorescent-lit airport, his suitcase rolling unevenly beside him, phone glued to his hand. I could almost hear the panic in his voice through the texts that kept buzzing in my pocket. Jessica, why isn't my ticket working? You can't do this. I'm stranded. I let my thumb hover over the notifications, then set the phone aside. He had done this to himself. Every lie, every deception, every promise he broke. The world he thought he controlled was unraveling, and I had the front row seat. Bianca, of course, tried to spin it immediately. Messages poured in from her number, alternating between pleading and gaslighting. Baby, please, it's not what it looks like. We were just friends, hanging out. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word burned in my mind. Friends? The photos didn't lie. The videos didn't lie. The champagne glass, the laughter, the way she pressed against him in every frame, they all told the story he wanted to deny. I dialed Valentina's number. We had dinner planned, but now she was my witness, my ally. She was incredulous, reading every message over my shoulder. Her voice rose and fell with disbelief and anger, sharpening the truth I had already cataloged. Jessica, you did the right thing. He lied to everyone, and Bianca, she's just as guilty, Valentina said, her voice a mix of fury and admiration. I nodded silently, though she couldn't see it. Justice didn't need words. It needed action. The text became more frantic. This isn't fair. You're being cruel. I need you to... I didn't finish reading. Instead, I prepared my own messages, concise, deliberate, unmoved by his panic. Ryan, we're done. You lied about the trip. You were with Bianca. Your belongings are in storage unit 42B at Secure Store. You have 30 days. Do not come to my apartment. The silence on my end contrasted with the chaos on his. Panic, frustration, the desperate need to be heard. None of it mattered. Not anymore. Even Bianca tried another approach. Begging, whining, gaslighting. You're being controlling. I didn't cheat. It's just friends, Jessica. I laughed quietly, a soft, bitter sound. Control had nothing to do with jealousy. It had everything to do with accountability. Valentina typed furiously on her phone, calling their mother to expose the truth. When she put the call on speaker, I listened as Ryan's own family learned exactly what he had done. The truth struck them instantly. Even his mother, who had often been sympathetic to his excuses, said with finality, "Good for Jessica. Maybe being stranded will teach him something." The calls, texts, and pleas escalated. Ryan claimed kidnapping, abuse, manipulation. I let them fly. Every desperate word he sent was another piece of evidence, another layer of his unraveling. And then, finally, Bianca's messages shifted. She cried, sobbed, begged. "I'm sorry. I love you. It was a mistake. I messed up. Please, Jessica, don't do this." Which part? I wondered silently. The lying, the cheating, the red bikini, the champagne glass pressed against her ex. I typed back one final cold message. Your mistakes are yours to own. Storage unit 42B. 30 days. Do not contact me again. The phone went quiet, finally. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the day sink in. My apartment was still, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos I had orchestrated. Ryan, stranded. Bianca, exposed. Lies laid bare. And me, calm, unshaken, finally free. A sip of wine, a deep breath, control restored, justice served. The storm had passed, but the aftermath was only just beginning. Monday morning arrived like a quiet storm. Ryan was still reeling from the previous day, stranded, frustrated, and desperately trying to regain control. Bianca, his ex, was a whirlwind of excuses and entitlement, her attempts to spin the narrative collapsing with each undeniable piece of evidence I had collected. By now, Valentina had become an active ally, helping me track every post, every lie, and every message. We had screenshots, timestamps, and documented flight cancellations. Every attempt at manipulation or gaslighting would be met with cold, concrete proof. Bianca's texts escalated rapidly, pleading, threatening, begging. "I'm sleeping at the airport. This is abuse. You can't do this to me. I'll sue you." I let them pile up, unread. Threats were meaningless when the truth was on my side. Her panic was evidence, her entitlement clear. By midday, the storage unit had become the next stage of her unraveling. She showed up with Hugo, an accomplice in her lies, expecting to reclaim her belongings. Problem was, she didn't have the access code. I had sent it to Valentina in advance, and Bianca had burned that bridge with her threats and accusations. She left empty-handed, frustrated, and humiliated. I watched from a distance, observing every misstep. She kicked at the locked gate, screamed about her rights, threatened police action. Security footage captured it all. By the time the local officers arrived, it was over. Documented. The law on my side. Meanwhile, the social media storm began. Bianca's posts, meant to paint herself as a victim, were shredded by screenshots and evidence posted by friends, family, and even the resort staff. Her attempt to manipulate perception failed spectacularly. Even her closest allies began to see the truth. Comments like, "Wait, wasn't Hugo with you on this trip?" And, "Girl, did you really lie about your PTO?" exploded across her profiles. The lies unraveled publicly, and the world could see her for what she had done. By midweek, professional consequences began to hit. Her boss discovered the PTO fraud. Her attempts to hide her vacation under false pretenses were exposed, and employment was terminated. She was not only socially discredited, but financially compromised. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my own peace. My apartment was calm, orderly, and mine again. I slept through the nights without fear of betrayal, my space free of deceit. I even began considering small joys I had long ignored, like finally adopting a dog I had always wanted. Through it all, Ryan tried to insert himself into the chaos, but even he began to understand the irreversibility of his choices. Every plea, every attempt to charm or manipulate fell flat against the clear evidence of his deceit. By the weekend, Bianca's story had fallen apart completely. Homeless, unemployed, financially responsible for the fraudulent charges she attempted to place on Hugo, she had burned every bridge. Even her family had withdrawn support. She was forced to face the consequences alone. I observed quietly, emotionally detached, yet aware of the satisfaction that comes from watching justice unfold naturally. No screaming, no drama on my end, just life reclaiming its balance. The chaos was hers, not mine. And in the midst of it all, I realized something crucial. The control had never truly been about power. It had been about clarity. Seeing the truth, acting decisively, and refusing to let lies fester. That clarity had restored not just my apartment, my possessions, and my dignity, but my life. By the end of the week, Bianca had reached the point of desperation. Threats, pleas, even attempts to manipulate friends or strangers, all met with indifference. She was isolated, accountable, and exposed, and I was free. The storm had passed. 2 weeks later, the chaos had settled into a quiet, almost surreal calm. Jessica Edwards, me, sat on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling beneath a crisp evening sky. The air smelled faintly of rain and asphalt, grounding me in a reality free of manipulation and lies. The Instagram storm had faded. Bianca's desperate posts were gone, replaced with whispers of fraud and lies. Social circles had shifted, friends who had once been complicit now aware of her duplicity. Even Ryan's attempts at reconciliation were met with polite, firm silence. He had been forced to confront his own mistakes in isolation, stripped of the excuses and lies that had once enabled him. I reflected on the sequence of choices that had led here, canceling flights, changing locks, cataloging evidence. It had been a cold, calculated plan, but one born of necessity. My life, my peace, my home, they were worth protecting. Valentina remained a steadfast ally, texting updates from Bianca's increasingly desperate attempts to reclaim anything. Employment inquiries, social media appeals, even attempts to manipulate mutual friends. Every message was a reminder that truth is relentless, and that when lies are laid bare, they crumble under their own weight. I smiled faintly, thinking of the storage unit, the final stage of accountability. Everything Bianca had thought she owned was either reclaimed by rightful owners, donated, or locked away until she proved she could act responsibly. Watching her scramble had been an unexpected mix of satisfaction and relief. Justice, I realized, doesn't always need drama. Sometimes it simply needs patience and courage. In the quiet moments, I reflected further. Betrayal had forced a reckoning, not just with others, but with myself. I had been hurt, yes, but I had also acted decisively, strategically, and with clarity. Each step had strengthened my resolve, teaching me lessons about boundaries, self-respect, and the cost of deception. Even Ryan, the one who had hidden so much behind charm and half-truths, became a mirror reflecting the consequences of dishonesty. By stepping back, I let reality enforce its own discipline. He learned, painfully, that trust, once broken, cannot simply be begged back. And Bianca? She became a cautionary tale, a study in entitlement, and the danger of assuming that charm and lies can bend reality to one's will. Social, professional, legal consequences converged, leaving her to face the results of her choices. I didn't revel in her downfall. I simply observed, aware that her story had naturally followed the trajectory her actions had earned. With each passing day, my apartment grew calmer, my routine restored, my nights peaceful. I even considered small joys long deferred, adopting a dog, reorganizing my home office, and reconnecting with friends I had unintentionally neglected. I realized then that the most profound victory wasn't in the chaos I had orchestrated. It was in reclaiming my own life, free from deceit, free from manipulation, free from the constant, simmering tension that had defined my relationship. 2 lessons lingered in my mind. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Lies, betrayal, and manipulation cannot be rationalized away. Facing the truth, however painful, is empowering. My body, my choice doesn't mean someone else's deception is my problem. Boundaries exist to protect the life you are building, and when violated, action, calculated, firm, and decisive, is the only path to reclaiming equilibrium. The city below hummed softly. The distant murmur of life went on, indifferent yet comforting. I leaned back, breathing in the night air, aware that the storm had passed, and for the first time in weeks, I was at peace. I had survived the lies, the betrayal, the chaos, and emerged stronger, wiser, and unshakably myself.